Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about America's role in World War II, focusing specifically on military action in World War II. Next week in class we'll look a little bit more at what happens in the United States as the war is going on. Here are your key questions and vocabulary. To start with, let's look at what the world looked like in 1941. Remember, this is the year that the United States and the Soviet Union joined the war against Germany and Japan. So on the one side, we have the Axis powers of Germany, Japan, and Italy. And on the other side, we have the Allies, the United States, Great Britain, and the USSR. And by 1941, all three of those guys end up in the war, and they all start to work together to fight against the Axis. World War II basically takes place on two major theaters. There's fighting all around the world, but the two major places are the European theater and the Pacific theater. And the European theater is in Europe, and it can be divided into two different fronts, that is, places where fighting is happening. And on the Eastern Front, this is between Germany and the USSR. And this is where a lot of the fighting for the whole war happens. Millions and millions of people die fighting on the Eastern Front. The Western Front is smaller, there's less fighting, and it's this front that the United States fights in. And on the Western Front, it's the United States and Britain versus Germany. So Germany is having to fight a war on two fronts, the Eastern Front and the Western Front. And also, then you have the Pacific Theater. And the Pacific Theater is almost exclusively a battle between Japan and the United States. Let's look first at the Eastern Front in Europe. And this is sometimes viewed as Germany's big mistake. It's the invasion by Germany of the Soviet Union. And the special name for this invasion was called Operation Barbarossa. And in the summer of 1941, Germany decides to invade Russia. And they make a lot of progress. And if you look at that map, you'll see that Germany actually pushes a long way into Russia. But by the winter of 1941, things are starting to turn around. Russia is able to stop Germany and then is able to start pushing Germany back. And this fighting is brutal. It's the worst and most deadly fighting of the war. And you see massive losses on both sides. Millions and millions and millions of people die fighting on this front. On the Western Front, it's less bloody, and this is where the United States is fighting. It's really kind of a sideshow compared to the brutal, slogging battles that are going on in the Eastern Front. But it's still important. And so this is where the United States is fighting against Germany, and it has three main goals. One is to protect Great Britain. Two is to take a little bit of the pressure off of Russia, that is to force the Nazis to turn some of their attention to the West. That way Russia has an easier time fighting them in the East. And then the third objective is destroying Germany. And the United States achieves these three objectives through two main strategies. One is by invading Germany from the West. And we start by invading North Africa, and then we move on to invading Italy, and then last of all we invade France from the north in the famous D-Day landing. And these invasions take time, and while we're getting ready for them, and while they are making their way to Germany, the United States is also using strategic bombing. And this is where you use airplanes to destroy enemy cities and enemy factories. And the United States wages a brutal campaign of strategic bombing against Germany, destroying many of Germany's cities and killing thousands and thousands of German civilians. And while this is all going on, the leaders of Britain, America, and the USSR join each other at the conference at Yalta. And at this meeting, these leaders discuss what's going to happen after the war. Because by the time they meet, it's pretty clear that they're going to win. And so now the question is, what happens when the Nazis are gone? And they come up with a couple agreements, but they also disagree on some stuff. One is they agree that the Axis powers have to surrender unconditionally. They have to just totally give up. Two, they decide that they're going to occupy Germany. And three is the US and the USSR agree to join the United Nations after the war is over. But there still are some serious problems here. And one is that Stalin, the leader of Russia, wants to be given Eastern Europe kind of as like a little empire for it to control on its border. So as we can see, they're working together, but there's also some tensions between these guys. So anyway, while that's going on, the Allies are crushing Germany. The war is all over at this point. They just have to finish it off. And Germany is getting attacked from all sides, and it's collapsing in on itself. And by 1945, the armies meet each other in Germany. So American armies and Russian armies invade Germany at the same time and meet each other in the middle. And what this means is that the control of Europe is now split between the United States and Russia. And this is problematic because both sides distrust each other. And this distrust is going to lead to conflict again right away in the post-war era and help to lead to the Cold War. In the other theater, the Pacific Theater, it's basically the United States all by itself against Japan. And the United States strategy here is a strategy known as island hopping. And basically what this means is that they're going to attack and conquer key islands to secure a route across the Pacific Ocean. And this is basically the fastest way for the United States to get across the Pacific Ocean and to attack Japan. And so they conquer little islands, famous little islands like Iwo Jima or Okinawa. And once they're close enough to Japan, they start bombing Japan, just like they were bombing Germany. And they start preparing for an invasion of Japan. But there's a big problem, is that Japan refuses to give up, and it's very, very well defended. And people are worried that if the United States invades Japan, millions of American soldiers will die. So the solution that the United States comes up with and ultimately uses is atomic weapons. The United States has been working throughout the war to develop atomic bombs, and they finally get it in 1945. The special program to develop an atomic bomb was called the Manhattan Project, and it was kept secret from the Russians, and the United States was able to be the first nation in the world to explode an atomic bomb in 1945 in New Mexico. Pretty soon after that, 2 more bombs were ready to go, and the United States decided to drop both of these bombs on Japan. The decisions were made by a new president, President Harry S. Truman, because FDR dies of a stroke in the last year of the war. Anyway, after the decision to drop the 2 atomic bombs, Japan decides to surrender, and with that, World War II is over. In the aftermath of the war, the United States and Russia emerge as the 2 major world superpowers. And these guys are going to compete with each other to try and control the world. And this competition and distrust leads to the Cold War, which we'll spend a lot of time talking about. On the other hand, Europe and Japan are both totally damaged, and it's going to take a long time for them to return, and they're never going to be super powerful like they used to be. And what this means is that now the United States is going to have to lead because they can't rely on Europe or Japan to lead anymore. So the United States has the power to do a lot of stuff to change the world. The question is, what does it want to do? What is it going to use its power for? And we'll learn more about that in coming videos.